their partner?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, everyone's next to their reading partner. Great. All right, boys and girls. So I'm excited to see so many faces that I remember from when I was your third grade teacher or when I taught third grade. And I was excited because after NWEA marks a very important time for you as readers. We are going to shift into a new class novel called The Thief of Always. And this novel is a fantasy, right? So think about what you know about fantasy books. Maybe you've watched fantasy movies, or you've also read your own fantasies. But fantasy books, they're not about the real world usually, right? They're usually about something made up. Something maybe a little magical, maybe something about a far off place and time, maybe something about the future. All right, so that's what a fantasy is. So we're gonna start reading The Thief of Always, and I'm gonna kind of warn you, this is a difficult book. This is not an easy book. And it's gonna take a lot of work to really understand, so I want you to pay really close attention as we read. So as we read, I want your eyes up here, and I want you really picturing the story. I want you really envisioning the setting in your brain, okay? As we read, The Thief of Always. Okay. So I'll show you the first picture. A little creepy, right? Cool. A little creepy. The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. The Thief of Always. Here's another picture. Again, kind of strange. That guy's got a creepy face, right? Harvey, half devoured, chapter 1. Half devoured. Devoured means like half eaten, right? Half devoured. That's making me think, like, along with this picture, like something's kind of creepy, something kind of scary is kind of happening in this chapter. Harvey, half devoured. The great gray beast, February, had eaten Harvey Swick alive. Here he was, buried in the belly of that smothering month, wondering if he would ever find his way out through the cold coils that lay between here and Easter. Wait a second, that's kind of confusing. It's talking about how this kid Harvey is being eaten alive by February? Can February really eat somebody alive?
No. Personification.
Oh my goodness, personification. I can tell you guys have really been studying your literary devices. Yeah, so when something that's not a person is given human-like characteristics, right? That's called personification. Great example of that. So February is kind of being described almost like a monster, eating Harvey alive, right? I know what it's like in Chicago in February. Cold, rainy, snowy maybe, depending on the day, right? So gray outside. Don't you just feel like, oh, when is this gonna be over? Doesn't February just seem so boring?
Yeah.
Like Christmas is already over and like nothing good's gonna happen until Easter, right? Until the leaves start blooming again, right? He didn't think much of his chances. More than likely, he'd become so bored as the hours crawled by that one day he'd simply forget to breathe. That's how bored he is. Then maybe people would get to wondering why such a fine young lad had perished in his prime. It would become a celebrated mystery, which wouldn't be solved until some great detective decided to recreate a day in Harvey's life. Then, and only then, would the grim truth be discovered. The detective would first follow Harvey's route to school every morning, trekking through the dismal streets. Then he'd sit at Harvey's desk and listen to the pitiful drone of the history teacher and the science teacher, and wonder how that heroic boy had even managed to keep his eyes open. And finally, as the wasted day dwindled to dusk, he traced the homeward trek. And as he set foot on the step from which he had departed every morning, and people asked him, as they would, why such a sweet soul as Harvey had died, he would shake his head and say, oh, it's very simple. Oh, the curious crowd would say. Do tell. And brushing away a tear, the detective would reply, Harvey Swick was eaten by the great gray beast February. Boys and girls, I'm kind of confused here. I'm going to stop for a second. Is this actually saying that he was definitely eaten in February by?
No.
Maybe. Or some people are saying no, some people are saying yes. But it's definitely kind of setting up the story, right? Aren't you feeling like this is a boy whose life is just kind of going like very downhill? He's just so bored in life. Like life is just so monotonous, so the same. Like his history teacher's so boring and drones on. And his science teacher's so boring, drones on, right? And he's got this terrible month of February where everything is so gray. And it seems like he is just about to die of boredom. Have you ever felt like you would just die of boredom?
Yep.
Like life is just so boring. So it seems like so far, Harvey's life is miserable, right?
True.
So true. We can all identify with that a little bit, right? When you're feeling like a miserable time in your life, where everything is boring. It was a monstrous month, that was for sure. A dire and dreary month. The pleasures of Christmas, both sharp and sweet, were already dimming in Harvey's memory, and the promise of summer was so remote as to be mythical. Like, you know how when summer seems so far away in February, we're like, oh, it's never gonna come, but it's coming soon, huh? There'd be a spring break, of course, but how far off was that? 5 weeks, 6? Mathematics wasn't his strong point, so he didn't irritate himself further by attempting and failing to calculate the days. He simply knew that long before the sun came to save him, he would have withered away in the belly of the beast. Who's the beast?
February.
You shouldn't waste your time sitting up here, his mom said, when she came in and found him watching the raindrops chase each other down the glass of his bedroom window. I've got nothing better to do, Harvey said, without looking around. Well, then you can make yourself useful, his mom said. Harvey shuddered. Useful? That was another work for hard labor. He sprang up, marshaling his excuses. He hadn't done this, he hadn't done that. But it was too late. You can start by tidying up this room, his mom said. But don't just sit wishing the days away, honey. Life's too short. But that's a good boy. And with that, she left him to it, muttering to himself. He stared around the room. It wasn't even untidy. There was 1 or 2 games scattered around, a couple of drawers open, a few clothes hanging out. They looked just fine. I am 10, he said to himself. Having no brothers or sisters, he talked to himself a good deal. I mean, it's not like I'm a kid. I don't have to tidy up just because she says so. It's boring. He wasn't just muttering now, he was talking out loud. I want to. He went to the mirror and quizzed it. What do I want? The straw-haired, snub-nosed, brown-eyed boy he saw before him shook his head. I don't know what I want, he said. I just know I'll die if I don't have some fun. I will die.
Okay, that's not fair.
Boys and girls, I'm like stopping here because so far we've read a big chunk, right? So one of the things I can do after I've read a big chunk is kind of do a little bit of retelling in my head about what just happened so far in the story, okay? So one of the things I'm saying is that obviously Harvey is just so bored. He's bored in February, he's bored at his house, he's bored that his mom keeps telling him what to do, he doesn't want to tidy up his room, he's got no brothers and sisters, there's nobody to talk with, he's just so bored, right? Is that kind of what happened so far? Okay, but now something exciting is about to happen, so get ready. As he spoke, the window rattled. A gust of wind blew hard against it, then a second, then a third, and even though Harvey didn't remember the window being so much as an inch ajar, it was suddenly thrown open. Cold rain spattered his face. Half closing his eyes, he crossed to the window and fumbled to slam it, making sure that the latch was in place this time. The wind had started his lamp moving, when he turned back, the whole room seemed to be swinging around. One moment, the light was blazing in his eyes. The next, it was flooding the opposite wall. But in between the blaze and the flood it lit, the middle of his room. Picture the light coming down in the middle of the room. And standing there, shaking the rain off his hat, was a stranger. He looked harmless enough. He was no more than 6 inches taller than Harvey. His frame scrawny, his skin distinctly yellowish in color. He was wearing a fancy suit, a pair of spectacles, like glasses, and a lavish smile. "Who are you?" Harvey demanded, wondering how he could get past this interloper to the door. Interloper's like an intruder. "Don't be nervous," the man replied, teasing off one of his suede gloves, taking Harvey's hand and shaking it. "My name's Rictus. You are Harvey Swig, aren't you?" "Yes." "Oh, I thought for a moment I got the wrong house." Harvey couldn't take his eyes off Rictus's grin. It was wide enough to shame a shark, with 2 perfect rows of gleaming teeth. Rictus took off his spectacles, pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, then started to mop off the raindrops from his waterlogged jacket. Either he or the handkerchief gave off an odor that was far from fragrant. The smell, in truth, was flatulent. "You've got questions, I can see that," Rictus said to Harvey. "Yeah? Oh, ask away. I've got nothing to hide." "Well, how did you get in, for one thing?" "Through the window, of course." "It's a long way up from the street." "Not if you're flying." "Flying? Of course. How else was I going to get around on a foul night like this? It was either that or a rowboat. We short folk gotta watch out when it's raining this hard. One wrong step and you're swimming." He peered at Harvey quizzically. "Do you swim?" In the summertime, sometimes," Harvey replied, wanting to get back to the business of flying. But Rictus took the conversation in another direction entirely. "On nights like this," he said, "doesn't it seem like there'll never be another summer?" "It sure does," said Harvey. "You know, I heard you sighing a mile off, and I said to myself, now there's a kid who needs a vacation." He consulted his watch. "If you've got the time, that is." "The time? For a trip, boy, for a trip. You need an adventure, young Swick, somewhere out of this world." "How'd you hear me sighing when you were a mile away?" Harvey wanted to know. "Why should you care? I heard you. That's all that matters." "Is it magic of some kind?" "Maybe. Why won't you tell me?" Rictus gave Harvey a beady stare. "I think you're too inquisitive for your own good. That's why," he said, his smile decaying a little. "If you don't want help, well, that's fine by me." He made a move toward the window. The wind was still gusting against the glass, as though eager to come back in and carry its passenger away. "Wait," Harvey said. "Oh, for what?" "I'm sorry. I won't ask any more questions." Rictus halted, his hand on the latch. "No more questions, eh?" "I promise," said Harvey. "I told you, I'm sorry." So you did. Rictus peered out at the rain. "I know a place where the days are always sunny," he said, "and the nights are full of wonders." "Could you take me there?" "We said no questions, boy. We agreed." Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Being a forgiving sort, I'll forget you even spoke. And I'll tell you this. If you want me to inquire on your behalf, well, I'll see if they've got room for another guest." "Oh, I'd like that." "I'm not guaranteeing anything," Rictus said, opening the latch. "Oh, I understand." The wind gusted suddenly and blew the window wide. The light began to swing wildly. "Watch for me," Rictus yelled above the din of the rain and wind. Harvey started to ask him if he'd be coming back soon, but stopped himself in the nick of time. "No questions, boy," Rictus said. And as he spoke, the wind seemed to fill up his coat. It rose around him like a black balloon, and he was suddenly swept out over the windowsill. "Questions rock the mind," he hollered as he went. "Keep your mouth shut, and we'll see what comes your way." And with that, the wind carried him off the bloom of his coat, rising like a black moon against the rainy sky. Oh my gosh. Readers, that was just a big chunk of text that happened, right? So I want you to think about what just happened since Rictus arrived. What just happened since Rictus arrived? And in a second, I'm going to have you retell what just happened to your partner. What happened since Rictus arrived? Think. What was the conversation between Rictus and Harvey? Give me a thumbs up against your chest when you can tell what happened since Rictus arrived. What was their conversation about? Turn and tell your partner. What happened since Rictus arrived? We were talking. There's Rictus and there's Harvey. Rictus and Harvey are the two characters. Rictus and Harvey.
They're talking about how Rictus and Harvey with his
Helped him with his boredom. And so what did he offer that would help him with his boredom? A vacation. Okay. What else?
Magic, a lot of magic.
Okay. So there was some magic that happened. So what was magical so far? Flew in. Was it a magical world before? It seemed just like a regular world. Okay. Okay, so and then what happens at the end of the chapter? What does Rictus do? Yeah. No, Rictus is the guy that flies in. Harvey's the boy. Okay, keep talking.
I had a question about it's weird because you never asked him more about being like what if he stays in
Oh yeah. Interesting question. All right, eyes back here in 3, 2, and 1. All right. So, readers, what has happened so far? And for the rest of the chapter. Yes.
Rictus told him about a place he didn't tell what it was called, but in the morning it was always sunny, and then the night it was full of wonders. And he asked him, and Harvey said, "Can you take me there?" And I don't know why, but he said no more questions. And I had a question: why didn't he ask if he was ever gonna go home? Like, what if he stayed and he was just tricking him?
Oh, so you're thinking, was anybody else thinking that too? Like, does this guy want to take Harvey there for good forever? Is that what you're thinking? And then Jennifer and Nicole and Crystal and Alejandra, they were talking about how it seemed like he was offering him this vacation, right? This way to escape from this boring world that he was living, right? Anyone would have anything else that they thought was important? Yes.
I started to wonder too, like, what if Rictus was like before Harvey was talking about a detective that followed him and told people like when he died and stuff.
Oh, so you were connecting it to what happened earlier in that chapter, thinking maybe this is gonna have something to do with how he dies. Who was kind of thinking that maybe? Anything else that seemed important in the chapter? Yes, hon?
Maybe he's just lying to him, and there's nothing what he said.
Oh, you think maybe he's lying? Why do you think that?
Because he's just a stranger.
He's a stranger?
Maybe.
What, did he seem kind of sneaky?
Yeah.
Right, didn't he?
Because he also flies.
Yeah, he flies. flies. You can't trust anyone that flies, right?
Mary
He was-
Poppins.
Mary Poppins. He was sneaky, right? So we're not really sure we can trust this character, right? All right. Okay, excellent. Now, boys and girls,